Welcome back to another episode of the Park City Real Estate Podcast. I'm pleased to be joined by Scott Jaffa, a very well-renowned architect in the area. Scott, I appreciate you reaching out. This is actually season 5 of the Park City Real Estate Podcast. So excited to get this off the ground again. And when I started it, I wanted to meet with architects, designers, and all of that. And that's your shop. You have I would call it vertically integrated shop. And so if you want, you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about how long you've been in Park City, what got you into being an architect, and what got you to design your company the way you designed it.
Moved here full-time in '94.
Okay.
I've been skiing here since '81. This always seemed like home. I grew up in Florida, and Utah just felt more like home than Florida ever did. And I was in Washington, D.C. doing my internship, and I woke up one day and I just wanted more. And I called my dad in Florida and asked if he would teach me how to build. And he said yes. And then I moved out to Utah, started setting up my business, and I came out here for a townhouse project in Park Meadows. And that's what I did for the first 5 years, 6 years I was here. And then we parlayed that into spec housing, and then that turned into custom homes and full house remodels. So we've sort of spread out, and we integrated interior design with the architecture and the construction so that everything we do is in-house. So it's more efficient, flows much smoother and easier. There are less errors, there are less mistakes, and we can deliver something on time and on budget because we have more control over the entire project.
So, and that also includes construction, correct?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So you're basically, from start to finish, you are, vertically integrated along the whole way for your clients and whoever reaches out to you. So.
Right. And when I moved here, we were the only design build firm in the Park City area, and maybe Salt Lake as well. And over time, there's other people that have come into the fold. I don't feel like they do a great product. It's not what we do, and it's not who we are. Mm-hmm. We do very bespoke homes. Everything we do is original and custom to each client, each lot. We don't repeat anything. We don't use things from another job on a new job. So it's really understanding and learning about the client and what they want and what their needs are, and always showing them better options if there are better options from our perspective. And sort of working as a team with the client, because it's a 2 to 3 year, 4 year sometimes relationship. So you get to really know people intimately, which is super nice.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I when you say bespoke, that's kind of a buzzword for me, because I feel like in a world, everything's evolving, right? Everything changes all the time, but it seems like there's everything is becoming bigger and bigger. You look at a lot of the real estate companies, so that's kind of my perspective.
Right.
There's, all sorts of brokerages being acquired by one brokerage. And so, and I think in those massive kind of acquisitions or just massive companies, you kind of lose a little bit, when you're trying to focus on the client and that bespoke experience. And so my understanding of your business is you're not after that bigger, better. Like you pick your projects based on how many other projects you have going on, so you can tailor that to whatever your client's needs are, and you're not overwhelmed. Tell me a little bit more about.
I don't want to be the biggest guy.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to do great architecture and great projects. And for me, 6 to 8 projects is really my sweet spot of what I can remember and keep up with. So when a client calls, I can have an intelligent, informed conversation with them because I know their project intimately. I can walk out to any house and I will know exactly what is wrong. It's a double-edged sword. It's that I have this innate sense when something is wrong and it doesn't feel right, or if it's not designed per the drawings. And that goes in every aspect of my life. That the first thing I focus on are the things that need to be corrected, not really what's right. But that makes for a better project, so we don't have errors or mistakes that we have to overcome that can't be fixed because it's too far down the line. And to me, it's really fantastic to draw something and then watch it come to fruition. when you're building it, and it's like, wow, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be. Clients never have any idea because they don't have a lot of them don't have the three-dimensional thinking that we have, but it's so rewarding to see it. It's like watching, I guess an analogy would be like watching a child grow up like super fast, or a dog. Like you start with nothing and then you end up, it's like
they're educated along the way. You kind of,
right. You create this amazing person or this amazing product, and then you hand it over to the owners, and what's amazing is it's exactly what they wanted, but it's more than they ever wanted, because they come with ideas and things, but to put it all together to make it a great project is what we do.
I can kind of relate to that, but sometimes I maybe take for granted the fact that my job in real estate, I'm helping people find, whether it's a lot or, an already existing home. And, I've been doing it for so long that it's still not lost on me, but sometimes, I get in the day-to-day of, showing people homes and all of that. I forget that it's so much more than just, homes or anything like that. People are going to be making memories there. They're going to be, establishing their legacy there, and it's going to be lasting. And it seems like from an architect's standpoint, it's just an even deeper feeling or experience, because you're having there, it's going from nothing. Like, it's just a concept, like, hey, I want to make memories. This is my dream, to be able to put so much in budget wise and like location wise, lifestyle wise. They're really putting a lot in your hands. And so I guess it's pretty cool to experience that with somebody, and then, over a 2, 3, 4 year period, like you said. But could you tell me a little bit maybe about, because, this is maybe a little self-indulgent, but I'm curious, when in the process do you like to get involved with these clients? Are you, before they even acquire land, before they even do anything in that regard, are you trying to be like their advisor, from the very beginning, or are you kind of, jumping in like after they get the property, or is it just kind of anywhere along the way?
I like to be involved at the very beginning, because selecting a site and making sure it hits all of the client's needs, and because I can't select it for them, I can give pros and cons on everything we're looking at. And if I understand that, then I can ask the important question, which is, why are you attracted to this lot more than this lot? Is it the long valley views? Is it the trees? It's flat? Is it hilly? Is it up? There's so many nuances, and a lot of times I find that what clients tell me they want isn't really what they want. And I'm sure you experience this in your field, and is understanding what they're saying and what they're not saying. So a lot of times meeting face to face with people is super helpful, because sometimes what clients don't say and how they look at each other tells me so much. And going to look at lots and walking lots with a client, the lot is the most important thing. And
so you have to be involved in
I like to be involved.
Yeah.
Clients will sometimes come with a lot. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because they're usually like A+ lots, and you can't do any wrong on them.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the most challenging homes I did, we had a 12-acre lot that was all flat with amazing views to the canyons, and we had an 1.5 acre building envelope. I didn't know where to start drawing because I had this entire canvas to start.
Yeah.
And that took longer because there were no external forces that were pushing. It wasn't the sun, it wasn't the hillside, it wasn't trees, it was just grassland. So I could do there was nothing driving. Usually all these external forces helped sort of push and drive the design. We ended up coming up with an amazing design, and it's one of my favorite houses we ever did for the clients.
Yeah, that's cool. I never thought about that challenge where, if it's like, if there's no like terrain or features or anything, you got a blank slate. So,
and getting to know the clients and asking very personal questions of how they live, how they interact, and how do they use different spaces and rooms, and what do they do together, what do they want separate. It becomes much more intimate than I think a lot of people really think about.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit deeper, like, because from my standpoint, I have a lot of people who maybe want to build because they're not seeing anything that they like that's already built. But they're afraid of that, almost it seems like what could be like a full-time job, having to do the design selections, having to find a lot, having to, go through the design process. But I'm curious how that works from your standpoint. When the clients get in touch with you, like what can they expect? What are the questions? Like what are some of, you mentioned some of them, but I'm curious, like what is your process for helping that client experience that bespoke so it's maybe not so overwhelming?
Well, it's really understanding how they live. Do they travel with staff, or is it just their immediate family? When we're designing the master suite, do they want a room big enough where they can sit in? They want an office attached, or they just want a bedroom with just a bed and a fireplace and maybe an outdoor, space in the bathroom? Do they want 2 toilet rooms? Should there be another bedroom that I would call like the husband's room if somebody is snoring? You want adjacent to the master bedroom, his and her closets. Do you want a bathtub big enough for 2 people, or is it just one person? Is one person neat or one person dirty, or you don't want the countertop to be continuous, each person gets their own vanity? Is the shower going to be big enough for both people to get ready at the same time? There are all these sort of questions that I don't think a lot of people focus on or even think about, because they just go through the day-to-day routine. And that goes through every aspect of the house. Like when you have guests, how long are they staying? Is this a permanent home, a second home? Do you want a coffee bar in the master suite area? A dirty kitchen or a butler's pantry? So that the main kitchen looks pristine since it's out in the middle of the great room. Garages, garages are finished like the rest of the house, with lighting, water, finished floor, drywall. I mean, they're beautiful spaces. Mm-hmm. How do you use them?
Yeah.
How many cars do you want? How many people, do you work in the garage? Do you have lots of bikes and toys? There's so many nuances that go into designing a house. But once I go through all of that, the best projects that we do are when clients trust us. Mm-hmm. And I know you know this too, is mm-hmm. we were hired because we're professionals. I know what I'm doing and I do it well, and you like my book of work. Trust that what I can put together is going to exceed your dreams.
Yeah.
There are clients that like to be actively involved and in every single decision and selection, which is absolutely fine too, because again, it's not my house, it's your house, and all I care about is when we're done, you're happy, and it is exactly what you want. And we always achieve that.
Yeah, I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier, and I think it's great to, focus on the details. It's so, like I think about the story of a home, I guess. When I'm showing people, especially in like Deer Valley or Promontory, or sometimes Tuhei, or even here in Old Town, we have a lot of historic homes. But there's always kind of like a story behind the home, and like you said, a lot of it is driven by lifestyle and how people conceptualize how they want their mountain life to be. But so there's like the grand concept of the home. I want a mountain home. I want this to be my lifestyle. And so you go from kind of like a dream, I guess you will, if you will, to the nitty gritty. And maybe there are some architects who maybe are like overwhelmed by, or they just have no desire to get involved in those details. So I'm curious how you kind of reconcile that. Is it people from your team? So you kind of like delegate to like subcontractors, designers, and all of that? Or are you just kind of involved in the whole process where you take the big grand dream of, the home and design it, and then, get into the nitty gritty and kind of, reconcile all that? So, because I think it's 2 parts of the brain, but.
It is, but they are all important. Mm-hmm. For example, we lay out the HVAC system. So we have a 3D model that we put together, and we bring the HVAC contractor, because where the ducts run and how they run and where we're doing drop ceilings are so important. I have been into so many homes in this town, and they are beautiful homes, and you walk in and they've got a trunk line running through the middle of a room, or they have drops in bedrooms that make no sense architecturally. And we can modify that when we're still in the paper stage, in the designing stage. If we have to drop a beam to do something, we can drop a beam, and then we might add a few other beams to make the room feel like it was meant to be that way, versus having it look like, oh, we needed the duct, so we did this. Integrating all of the things, the air conditioning, the appliances, it all needs to be seamless, so it feels like it was thought out and meant to be the way it is when we're done.
Yeah, I like that. I think I've seen so much disjointedness when when you have a design, and maybe it's like a cookie cutter design, somebody who just pops them out, and then you have to hire a designer, and they have a different vision. An interior designer, they have a different vision of how a room should look, and so you have to make modifications there. And then you get down to the contractor or the subcontracting level, and they're like, well, that's not possible, or no, we can't do that because of such and such. And so then it just becomes, and then sometimes the contractor just does their own thing and doesn't even consult the designer or or the architect. And so then you're dropping a beam after the fact, or something like that. So
so everyone on my team knows that anything can be done. I will get calls, the HVAC contractors here, we can't do what you want, we have to drop the ceiling. I said, I'll be out there in a minute. I can put my eyes on it, and sometimes if you have fresh eyes looking at something, I can start asking questions and understanding why and how we got there. There's always a solution, there's always a good solution. Mm-hmm. And it just requires attention and care and detail. And I think a lot of people would rather do something fast and move on to the next job. Do it mm-hmm. fast, move on to the next job. And that's not how I like to operate. I think it needs to be done right. And people are spending a lot of money on these houses and how they all go together. And there's no reason that we, as a profession, don't have the time to go and make sure that they are accurate. In my office, we have a project architect, we have a project designer, and we have a superintendent that all are integrated into each project. I insert myself where I'm needed, when I'm asked, or when I think it's important, to help overcome any stalling points or any sticking points or any problems that other people can't solve.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Yeah, and so I and every client's going to be different. Everybody's different. Some people maybe don't want that or need that, or they have somebody else in mind for all these, and they can piece together, their own team if they want, right? I mean, that's
absolutely.
Yeah. So
it just requires a lot more, and I don't know if the end solution is any better. Mm-hmm. Actually, I know it's not.
Yeah, that's a fair point. You have enough experience to kind of
right.
Yeah.
But it's
and it goes back to that trust thing, I think, too.
It does. Like our designer works with the architects to figure out how the master bed is going to work, how the vanities are going to work, the mirrors, the lighting. So we're thinking about all of that when we're still in the preliminary design stage of what the clients are asking for. And sometimes the clients ask for A and we think they really want B. So we draw A and we draw B. Mm-hmm. We show them what they want, and then we show them what we think they want. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, they will go with option B. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm a very good listener, and I ask a lot of follow-up questions because I need to understand nuances, why is this important? How do you see this working? Is it just you cooking? Are there two other people helping you? How the kitchen works, or it's very important. Mm-hmm. So when somebody gets in there, they're not, if somebody is 5 feet tall and you've given them 6 feet from counter to counter, they're running back and forth from the cooktop to the sink, and they're exhausted by the time dinner is done versus mm-hmm. Turning around for one step. And those kind of things are super important. What's your stride? How do you want this to work?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, there's the level of detail that we get into, and then, pulling in the right subcontractors for mm-hmm. each project.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've got to, what I do is I have to tailor who I am and how I speak mm-hmm. for every personality type that comes in. Because what I can say to one couple is not really, won't work with another couple.
Mm-hmm. And all that's kind of sussed out when you're able to meet with them in person and just kind of get to know their personalities
right.
and all that. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen projects get stalled, speaking of kitchens, right? I've seen projects get stalled because, you don't know where the fridge goes, or, you're like, well, does the fridge go here, or does it go back there, And so it's refreshing to hear that you kind of have all that thought out before you even go into it, right?
And you always have to go through the whole process with clients when they say, I don't like this. So you have to go through the whole process of, let's look at this option, let's look at this option. So we look at all these other options. Most of the time we end up back where we started mm-hmm. because what we came up with the first time answered all of these questions, but sometimes words fail mm-hmm. when trying to explain that drawings people will feel more attached to and understand more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes that's relatable, and
Yeah.
when showing people homes, and
Right.
or communities, and what your lifestyle is going to look like here versus over here, and things change, and sometimes you'll start somewhere, and then you'll have an idea and have to explore it, but you have to explore it with the client, and then if you end up back where you started, that's okay too, because
Right.
at least you explored it. So
Right. There's not a better option out there.
yeah, so I want to zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
Right before we turn the cameras on, we were talking about trends.
Mm-hmm.
and I show homes, built in the 80s, built in the 90s, early 2000s, and things go in style, things go out of style, all the time. But I'm curious if what your if you can kind of explain to to the audience, whoever ends up listening, how you feel about trends, and the pros and cons of building to maybe a trend, or having something else influence how you approach your build.
I think any trend, if it's done right and designed well with quality materials, will stand the test of time. I can look at a falling water I was just at last week with my daughter. It's 90 years old. It looks like it was built yesterday. You can look at a Spanish revival home in LA that was built in the 20s. They're magnificent. You can look at a mid-century modern with an orange front door with a handle in the middle. If it's designed right, it is timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's when people put things up without care, without thought, where it's just a box with windows and just a basic plan with no level of detail, nothing of any significant interest, that's when things don't stand the test of time. It's like, oh, this is fashionable, we'll do this now, or blue is the color, so we'll do blue now. It's, I did a house in Naples, Florida, and every single house that we looked at that was being built they were all white, every house.
Mm-hmm.
From everybody. It didn't matter what architect, what builder, the client didn't want that. They wanted a blue house. I've never done a blue house.
Mm-hmm.
We went through so many iterations of blue to find the right color and the
gotta be
right
tough.
finish. It is amazing. The house looks beautiful.
Cool.
And it works with the bay water. I mean, the way it all just blends in, it feels like it belongs nowhere else except in Naples, Florida.
Cool.
Which is how it should be.
Yeah.
I'm doing I'd say it's new construction now. The Dean of Architecture of the University of Michigan designed a house that a client bought, and we're working on the design on that. And we ended up taking 95% of the house down, and we're rebuilding. But what we're putting back together is the same but different. We're updating it. The ceilings were 8 feet. We're making them 9 and 10 feet with the flat roofs. We added a couple more pitched roofs. And it was a white and black house that was built in '65. And that's what we're putting back together.
Cool.
And it'll look like it was built in '65 when we're done, but with all of the modern touches and details in it. So it looks like it's relevant.
Yeah, you're speaking my language when you say, the timeless, right? Because, again, going back, everything's bigger, or everything's kind of like cookie cutter, and it's just like there's this design, and every building's going to look like that because that's efficient. That's what everybody else is doing, and we know it works, and so why change it? And you look at some of the structures, you look at all the buildings, and I see, like, on LinkedIn, people will post their most recent design for such and such a build that they're doing, and it looks exactly like the one they did before, and the one they did before, and all of that. It seems like the soul has been taken out of a lot of architecture. I guess when I travel or something, and you look at something that was built hundreds of years ago, the level of craftsmanship that was involved, they didn't have all these fancy tools, and you wonder where that soul went, But I do feel like, especially having been in this business for a while, I feel like maybe it's not so much, we're building these grand temples or these grand structures for everybody. I feel like it's that kind of architecture in some ways, depending on the person, has shifted to where people live.
Right.
And so that's where I think that timeless, I'm probably on a soapbox here, but I think that's where that timeless, attention can really, make a difference when we look at, I guess, when I maybe get a little cynical about architecture these days. I think I look at some of these homes, especially, I see what you're posting, and I'm like, oh, there is still like great architecture. It's just in the homes now, and maybe not so much in our buildings and public structures. And
That's true. And I think living in Park City, it's such an amazing place. Clients come here because they want to be here. And clients come here because they've made a lot of money doing something else in their world. And They understand value, they understand design, they understand what we offer. So we get to do like what we love to do, which is create these amazing buildings. And budget is important, but it shouldn't always be the number one deciding factor in what you do. It should definitely be a factor, but it's never number one on the list. It's like, oh, okay, I can do this option for $100,000 less than this. Let's throw it out to the client. Let's see if they see a value in spending it or not. And sometimes we do that. Sometimes you can't perceive the difference. We'll go look at finishes with clients, and every person's the same. Every client's the same. They always gravitate to the most expensive because they're the most beautiful.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
But truth be told, you can use that tile or you can use the $5 square foot tile in the house. And when it's in the house, you're not going to know the difference most of the time, because it's not about one individual item or selection or finish. It's about how it all comes together. I've always told clients, if you put everything you like in a house, you won't like it, because you have to have balance. And I mean, you go into enough homes, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
Like you can't say what it is, but it just feels good. The light's right. It flows great. The finishes from one room to another, everything just flows seamlessly. So it just all feels so comfortable, like you could live there. And that doesn't just happen. That is well thought out and well laid out. And how do people get around houses where they don't have to leave breadcrumbs, even though it's a 16,000 square foot home, that it's easy to get around if you're a guest and you don't live there? Or how do you get it? You walk in and just always feels so easy.
Yeah, we call them intangibles. Sometimes you like walk into a home and it has a feeling, and sometimes you immediately, it registers on a client's face, like whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling.
Right.
And I do feel like a lot of that does come down to the flow and just everything. Like I heard you mention, so there's one of the homes that our brokerage has listed, it's called Monitor's Rest, and they selected like a different theme for like each of the bedrooms, and one of the themes is like they imported stuff from Morocco because they liked that.
Right.
But then another room has another theme from a different part of the world, but the way that it was designed, I do feel like it kind of balances. And so and I think that, I guess when I think of like what influences people's decisions when they're trying to decide what goes into a home versus what goes out of a home, is budget kind of a primary deciding factor for that, or is it just kind of?
Budget is always a factor. Value engineering is always a factor in every project we do. It's interesting, sometimes when we go in and we try to value engineer, we end up adding more back than what we took out, which is typical, because again, people are spending a lot of money on these houses, and the delta between what they're spending and what they really want is negligible in the big picture of who they are and what they want. And a lot of it is a lifestyle choice. These houses are being held in trusts for families for generations, and that's what a lot of my clients want. They don't want to look at a resale or a flip. It's like, hey, we're going to keep this forever. Whether they do or not is immaterial, but that's how they approach it. And that's the best way to approach a house versus flipping it, which means you want to do the least amount to get the most amount of money. And that's never the right decision. Even when we did spec homes, or I would build my own personal homes, I would always go above and beyond. Like the mechanical rooms, you could have a dinner party in them. They were finished so beautifully. All the selections, materials, because everyone that's spending this kind of money, they know value. They can walk in, they can see where you didn't spend money, where you tried to save money, where things don't work right because you changed something. Versus if you put it all in, whether it's a whole house audio system, a swimming pool, lighting systems, all of these nuances, bringing a lighting designer or a landscape architect, those all make such a difference. And again, the client doesn't know when you walk up to the house immediately, but once you get in, it all makes sense.
People are pretty savvy in that regard.
Are.
Yeah, and you can tell maybe when something hasn't been done with a level of attention that that some people bring to the table, such as yourself. So I think I guess in closing here, I want to ask, because you got you're always constantly I guess things evolve, right? Things change, and Park City's different from 5 years ago, and it's going to be different, in 10
Right.
years with the Olympics and everything. But I know you've got a lot of projects that you're working on right now, but I'm curious just from a maybe, outside perspective, is there a project that that you've taken on maybe that you were that like surprised yourself, and then like a follow-up to that, is there a project that maybe you haven't gotten to do yet that maybe you're kind of, itching to get into?
I think I've been very fortunate in the clients and the projects I've done, and I just love what I do, and I love every house I've ever done. And what you're asking is a very personal question, and I would say every client that has moved into a house I've done is very happy with the final product and what they have, and what the architecture and the design and how it all flows together.
Cool.
And you did say one thing I just wanted to circle back on. Nobody should ever be scared or afraid to build a new house. It is fun. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be difficult. It's just understanding the process of what you go through, and letting your architect, letting me know that you trust us, that what we are going to do for you is going to give you exactly what you want and be more than what you want. I had a client, she walked in for the final walkthrough of her house, and there were 3 times she said, "I did not know we were getting that. I did not know you were doing that." And she loved it.
It's pleasant, pleasant surprise.
Because it was a pleasant surprise that, and again, a lot of clients don't understand all the details and the drawings, and we do drawings that are upwards of 75 to 100 pages. So you can't always expect a client to understand all of the drawings, but it really is a fun process. And it doesn't have to be arduous, it doesn't have to be difficult, and then you get exactly what you want versus compromising for the same amount of money.
Yeah, I love that perspective, and I know you can take, and the way that you gain that trust, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. It's probably, when you first meet them, and just that process of talking through things, but you also can show them, what you've done in the past, and that, I imagine goes a long way, in taking them to your past projects and that kind of thing.
And having them meet clients, like you can meet any client. Like there's good, there's bad, there's always, pros and cons to everything, but clients always smile when I walk in. It's nice. I'm always like welcomed into their houses, and I really like that.
So what would be the best way, say somebody is interested in having a consultation with you, or getting in touch with you? What's the best way for them to get that process started?
Sitting down, just coming up with a very high level budget. This is where I want to be. This is what I'm looking for. Can I get it? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, but most of the time there's always a compromise that comes into play. And having those open and honest conversations at the beginning make everything so easy moving forward. I will show a sample budget to a client of how we break everything down, from labor and materials for the cost of everything. We'll walk through and look at finishes in houses to understand. I had a client that I was designing a house for, and I took them and showed them a place I did in the Colony, and they asked if I could do that level of detail on a house in Lower Deer Valley. I said yes. I did it, and he said, "Do you think I can get my money out of it?" And then COVID hit, right? I said,
"Definitely.
You can get a lot more than what you put in out of this house if you want to sell it."
Yeah.
So real estate, it goes up, it goes down, but at the end of the day, it always ends up. And we live in such an amazing place with such beautiful landscape and views and lots and neighborhoods. It's like, you have to try not to do it right. And there are people that try to do that, but we're just really fortunate. And the fact that I've been able to travel so much and to read, I can keep up with, like, not trends, but different styles and there's so many ideas that I can pick up from just random places, random buildings. It's like, that is such a great idea. And it could have been a townhouse built in like the 1800s, but it's like that detail, the way the stone is chiseled on the outside, works seamlessly on this project.
Yeah, I like that. And you also stay in touch with other architects throughout the country to kind of maybe see what they're doing in their various areas and all that.
But then understanding how it's not just the design or the architecture, how is it being built? How are we holding it together? What are the materials we're using? How are we, soundproofing and deadening the sound, from this room to that room? And how are we venting and heating. And, I had a client and she walked in and said, there's no air ducts in my kitchen or in my laundry. I'm so disappointed. I said, Kim, why don't you stay in the house for a week and then tell me? She said, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I am so comfortable everywhere. How did you do that? I said, we designed the system appropriately. So everything on the outside is cooled. Every window is covered with a sheet of air conditioning. So when you go inside, that's where we're pulling all the air to. It's just as cool as it is over here. So it's sort of nice to sort of be able to explain these things and understand. And
we were talking earlier about, the Florida, client, the Texas client,
right,
California client. We have different requirements here in Utah that, they maybe are not familiar with if they designed something in Florida. And so having that local expertise and knowing what materials to use to, really maximize energy efficiency and just comfortability of living in the home and, withstanding the elements, that kind of thing.
Right, Florida, you've got a delta of 30 degrees from the inside to the outside most of the year. Here, we've got 100 degrees that we're dealing with. So the windows are one of the most important items in the house. And I would always tell a client, you build the smallest, most well-insulated house and spend the most money we can afford on windows. The rest of it is easy.
Yeah.
It's quality over quantity. Doing something right versus doing it just big to be big.
Yeah, and I think, windows is a big thing right now. It seems like all the houses are designed around, just having the big windows and everything. But really, I think it just does go down to that client preference, the lot, and like what house works for this community, that area. And if what you want is windows, great. But
right,
you can basically do anything. You just have to decide what your lifestyle looks like and go from there. Huh?
It's taken me a while to learn, but I can do anything that you want me to do. Truly.
Yeah.
All that takes is time and money. And it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's fun to come up with these ideas that we've never done before.
Yeah.
Or how can I, can I do a cantilever that long? Or a double cantilever in an earthquake zone with, 144 pounds per foot of snow on the roof. It's very interesting because there's a lot of science involved, there's a lot of physics involved, and trying to get everything to work. So when you're in the house and it's 0 degrees and snowing outside, you don't have condensation on the windows and you feel comfortable in the house and you can stand next to a window without feeling the cold on your skin. There's so much that goes in. It's like we're not building houses, we're building buildings because they are so complex.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, as from a sales standpoint, I guess I forget about some of those details that are involved in getting the home built. But I think it's reassuring to know that you would take a client through that whole process from lot selection down to getting the house built. And you mentioned something about it's time and money, and yeah, that's true. But then you have something that you're proud of and that kind of.
It is. It's so exciting. You drive by and it's like, God, that house is so beautiful. Wow, that was the right decision. It was worth pushing hard against the HOA to make sure I could do something like that. And sometimes I have to.
Yeah.
In certain neighborhoods, they have very stringent guidelines, and there's always gray areas to work around, because what a client wants and what you're allowed to do aren't always the same.
Yeah. Well, and so you've been doing this, sounds like, for 30 plus years now.
Yeah.
So.
I know. I feel like just yesterday I moved here and started this. And
hey, the beautiful place to be.
It is,
so,
right? It's great.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I moved here. Every community, every area kind of has its own character, and
right.
And you can really find anything here for your mountain life. So